All right, in this week's approach to drawing, I'm going to reverse the equation. Typically you work on white paper. Today, we're going to work on black paper. So you could say, on white paper, your light's already there, and what you're doing is adding your darker values, your shadows. But here, your shadows are already here, and what you're doing is adding your light. So again, going with our pair, I'm going to draw. Again, this is a white charcoal pencil. This is what I'm drawing with. I have an eraser handy, just in case. I'm going to draw a very light line. Remember, light comes forward and dark recedes. So in doing this, your outline, your contour line needs to be very light, because otherwise if it's heavy, it'll pop forward. So notice I'm keeping it very light. You can just barely see it, right? So here's our pear. There we go. And what I want to do is look where the light hits the pear and describe the light. Light's on the left for me, shadow on the right. So what I'm doing, our shadows are already here. I'm adding my light to this. And I always think of this, I always think that less is more. In other words, you don't have to put everything in. You don't have to be heavy-handed. You could look at artists like Caravaggio, Rembrandt. Look how dark their shadows are, you know? So they don't overstep that boundary too much. They really keep, they either create that feeling of drama in their paintings by having that contrast between light and shadow. So just looking at the pear, looking where the light is versus the shadow, looking at the shape of each. So that's important. Look at the shape of the light, look at the shape of the shadow. All right. And this doesn't need a lot to do this. Like I say, I could leave this shadow almost completely blank like this. All right, I could even erase that contour line that I put in initially. And then of course I could look at the background and the foreground. I could define that. I'll put in my back edge of my setup here, of my box, and then use the background. Oops, not the background. Use the foreground and the background to define the pear as well. So this hammers home two ideas I think are helpful. One is value. Your values can be pretty dramatic or pretty dark. And also context. Context becomes important because I'm using the context to define the object. Right, there we go. And as I come down the paper or forward on the table, I'm going to make it lighter, because remember, light comes forward. So I'm making it lighter here as a relationship to there. I can get that front edge of the table to come forward. Go all the way up to the pear. And same thing, light comes forward and dark recedes. So, whatever you want to pop forward, make it lighter and brighter. Now this stuff erases pretty well, but if you go too far with it, you can use your compressed charcoal, maybe your vine charcoal, to black it out. In other words, to go back to a black or darker value. Now this is pastel paper, and I do have the graininess of the paper here. So I can either take my finger and do this and work it into the graininess of the paper, right? Change the whole texture of the drawing, and layer more white charcoal pencil into that. Reflection there. Now there's a stem up here, it catches some of the light. Got some highlights in here. Let's see how that looks. There we go. I think that's getting pretty effective. All right, so it's still working with the value, but reversing the equation. In other words, your shadows are in place, and what you're doing, as you see I'm doing, is you're adding your light. Sometimes it takes a little bit of practice, but there you go. Let's have a look at that. All right, so your next drawing, use your white charcoal pencil. We're going to be drawing on black paper. You're going to try this. Now I cut my sheet up into quarter sheets, so this is just a quarter sheet of the 20 by 30 inch sheet of paper that I use. Okay, so there you go. So go ahead, you're going to try this and see how it goes. I'll look at my result, do some editing here. There we go. And all right. And remember, I always think less is more here.